Yogah Karmasu Kaushalam.
I would like to give you a brief introduction about our resource person today. Dr. Charul Jain is an associate professor in the Department of English, Faculty of Arts, the Maharaja Sayaji Rao University of Baroda. She has 30 years of teaching experience at the undergraduate and postgraduate levels. Dr. Jain has taught in various premier institutions like BITS, Pilani, and LD Arts College, Ahmedabad. Her areas of specialization and research are English language teaching, English for specific purpose, Indian writing in English, and drama. Many of her articles have been published in journals of national and international repute. Dr. Jain has authored 7 books for the undergraduate students of English, including Basics of Academic English, Part 1 and 2, the English for Academic Purpose, Books 1 and 2, and the most recent one is English Language Skill for Academic Purpose in 2017. Dr. Jain has been conducting workshops for the teachers across the country of issues regarding their teaching learning contexts. She has been actively interested and involved in teaching English, integrating information and communication technology. She has been developing MOOC courses for MHRDs, EPG Partsalas, and also for this SWAYAM. Dr. Charul Jain is a member of Board of Studies of her department as well as member of the faculty board at the university level. She is member of the core team of International Quality Assurance Cell of the university, and she is regularly involved in the several administrative and extracurricular activities at the department and university. So now without taking too much time, ma'am, the class is all yours. Thank you.
Namaskar, everyone. I would like to begin by sharing my heartfelt thanks to Professor Nimawat, Professor Joshi, and the entire team of UGC HRDC Ahmedabad for giving me an opportunity to be here to interact with all. Actually, this is uh, a thing which is very close to my heart because all us teachers, somewhere or the other, while in our academic journey or a career journey, we have to undergo such kind of training programs to develop keep ourselves updated and to develop our knowledge base. And once I was on the other side, once I was sitting where you people are sitting, and so now coming on the other side is a very happy feeling. And also this gives me an opportunity to meet such young teachers who are now starting their career. And if I am able to speak to you, interact with you, that really makes me very happy. And maybe I would be able to share some thoughts that I have learned alongside, and maybe from this session you would be able to help me learn a few more things. So I hope to have an interactive session where we are able to share ideas. So I would like to begin at that note. I would like to begin with my presentation. So today I am going to talk about, I would also like to thank uh, K.R. Rajput, madam, for introducing me so nicely and so generously, and I'm really humbled. Thank you so very much. So I would like to begin now talking on the topic 21st century skills and NEP 2020. So would you allow me to share my screen? Just give me a moment. So is my screen visible to you all? So
Yes, ma'am.
so first of all, before I begin what I have to say, can I ask you people, what do you understand by 21st century skills? What is your perception of 21st century skills? If somebody wants to raise the hand and answer the question, or if you would like to put it up in the chat box, you are welcome to do either way. I would be coming back to others when we have a few more points of discussion as we go along the presentation today. I have tried to make my presentation situated in the present teaching learning context, and primarily I would be referring to several things that were there in the past. So I am sure there would be a lot of things that several of you would want to share, and I would like to give space to different voices. So those people who have already expressed their views, and they are definitely welcome, but if there are others who would want to raise their hands and would want to participate, they would be equally or more welcome, right? So I am talking about 21st century skills. Now, the very first term that I have used, 21st century, we have all stepped into the 21st century, 2 decades into the 21st century. And this is a remarkable shift that we have made from the previous century. A few things that have really set this century apart from the previous century is, I think, two very significant aspects. One is globalization, which was ushered in India in the last decade of the 20th century, and digitalization, which has come along with globalization and has impacted us in a very big way in the beginning of the 21st century. With globalization came a burst in knowledge, which was furthered by the digital education. Another thing that has happened, which is probably the result of both these things, globalization as well as digitalization, is the fact that in 2005 and 2005 onwards, the governments have been paying a lot of attention to the education that is being imparted to the students. And therefore, in 2005, we had an introduction to CBCS, which was being brought in. And there was a kind of shift in the educational pedagogy, the way teaching used to happen. And in a phased manner, those things were introduced. First, they were introduced in the schools. And at least the teachers in Gujarat would agree with me that most of the higher educational institutions adopted CBCS in 2011-12. So in the second decade of this century, there was a shift in education which was propelled by all these aspects which we have discussed earlier. Now, the question that arises is, have these changes that have been taking place in the last 3 decades, are they in any way related to teacher and to the student? You have shared a lot of ideas about how teaching learning scenario has changed. But now let us also have a look at, are there any specific research-based indications that there is a shift that is taking place in the world? Are the 21st century skills different from the skills of the previous century? So I move on to the next slide, and you have already answered this question. So I would like to take you to the response which has been given by several researchers. There was a team of researchers which put up their findings in 2002, and looking at the changing world, they proposed that there would be, this group was called Partnership for 21st Century Skills. And they put up this parameter that there will be a change in the requirements of the kinds of skills that people would need to survive and to succeed in the 21st century. They created this kind of a diagram, which is very popular these days. And the core, the center, is the green. Can you all see this diagram that I'm going to explain now? Can I zoom my slide? I can zoom my slide, I don't mind that, but then I would not be able to see the messages that you are putting up. So I am zooming as you requested. I am zooming my slide. Can you see it better? It becomes a little difficult for me to shift from one screen.
Yes, madam.
Can you see it better now?
No, ma'am.
Unable to read,
No?
read out what's the slide.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So somebody's mic seems to be on. So could you kindly, yeah, thank you so much. Right. So as you can see at the center, can you see my cursor? The core subjects, 3 R's, and the 21st century themes are still the core. And the core subjects, as we knew, as we studied in the school, sciences, maths, social science, history, geography. As we grow higher in higher education, suppose we are engineering students or we are students of science. So whatever other core subjects still remain a very important aspect where one needs to have expertise. But from 20th century to 21st century, they merely alone do not suffice. In addition to these core subjects, there are three more additions which are required for success in the 21st century. One is life and career skills. Second is learning and innovation skills. And third is information, media, and technology skills. In addition to these three, you also have an idea about standards and assessment. So now, as I'm a member of IQAC, I often keep thinking and working in regard to that. So there are certain standards and assessment. So we are all concerned with what are those standards and how will we evaluate it to be able to reach those standards. How is the curriculum changing and what is the method of instruction that we have to adopt to reach that curriculum? We have to be continuously developing ourselves. So professional development has also become a key word. Probably the number of FDPs taking place nowadays is unprecedented because earlier you did not find such kind of professional development programs, as probably the changes were not so many and the updation that is required these days is very fast and very frequent. And the changing learning environments that the present day world requires, which is something that all the teachers and all the students have to be abreast of. And as a result, this kind of a model was come up with by the Partnership for 21st Century Skills. I am focusing on the colored segment of the diagram that P4 group has come out with. And there are two sections, and the upper section deals with learning of core subjects, learning and innovation skills, which is called 4Cs: life and career skills, information, media, and technology skills. Now, it is here that I would like to also talk to you about certain things that you people had mentioned, that today's youth is much more aware. They need us as facilitators, but they do not respect us. And it is here that the changing value systems have come into place. Because here, the students are not only limited to learning the core subjects. They have diversified themselves and they require all these three in addition to the core subjects. So if there was a teacher of mathematics, we would revere her, regard her as a teacher of mathematics. But nowadays, students like those teachers better, who are better able to connect with them, who help them with various aspects of their student life, their extracurricular activities. So the kind of reverence, the kind of respect that the teachers of subjects used to have, as you people were correctly mentioning, is reducing. And teachers who are more diversified in their interaction with their students and in their areas of interaction with the students, they become more and more important. Several things that I will be talking about have been taken from Kivunja and others, who published a research article in 2014. And there are several books, if you people would like to refer to, you can go to those books online as well. So these are the 21st century skills. Communicating, as you people were rightly saying, has become the mainstay of the 21st century. You are communicating all the time, whether you have WhatsApp, whether it is Instagram, whether it is Facebook or a phone call. Communication has become the mainstay of today's world. Probably the people did not communicate so much in the earlier days. If I take clockwise, collaboration has also become very important. If we are stuck anywhere, we immediately ask our friends to collaborate with us. to help us with several ideas, and internet resources are always there collaborating with us in finding out information and using the information. Somebody had rightly said that unless we are able to use certain things, information purely for the sake of information is not needed these days. What is required is the ability to implement that, to use that through analytical thinking and reach at certain solutions, solve the problems by using whatever knowledge base that we have. Finding and evaluating information has become very important. So we do not suck up the information as it is. We try to find how useful, how relevant it is, and thereby we do problem solving through the information that is available. One of the very important things of the present century is creating and innovating. Modi ji is continuously harping upon entrepreneurship. What is not very important in the modern world is that you take up job, the pre-created jobs. But what is more important in the present world is you are able to create and innovate something new, something different, and by that make a mark for yourself and provide employment to numerous others. These are certain things which have changed in the 21st century, which were not so significant in the previous century. And as a result, you see that the education policy has also changed. I am not going to talk in detail about education policy. I am going to limit myself to how the 21st century skills are reflected in the education policy, which has come out in 2020. And I am only limiting myself to higher education scenario. So one of the comments which were very significant given in the national education policy, which I have lifted from there, and I quote, "Teachers truly shape the future of our children." And therefore, a lot of responsibility is on the shoulders of the teachers, who are the shapers of the future of our children. And the future of our children is also very clearly defined in the national education policy. And since I am a teacher of language and I am addressing teachers of different languages, I would say that I will not talk about other characteristics and parameters that are laid down in national education policy, but I would be limiting myself only to language. So one of the very important aspects that the national education policy lays down is 3-language formula. And when we are talking about 3-language formula, it in a way instills the fact that English continues to be a very significant aspect of language teaching and learning. It continues to be a medium of instruction at higher levels, at the same time making provision for flourishing the regional and the mother tongues of various children. 3 other things that I found very interesting in the national education policy was enhancement of language through innovative and experiential methods. So if you look at innovative and experiential methods, which I have taken from national education policy, it directly connects with the 21st century skills, which focuses on creativity and collaboration. Till the earlier days, if you go back and remember the kind of education scenario that you people used to have, or we people used to have, the teacher would be teaching in the classroom, the teacher would be deciding what content has to be taught, and the teacher would be writing on the board, and the students would have to copy and learn, and there would be a lot of homework. And as you people had rightly mentioned, that we used to have a lot of respect, and whatever teacher would teach, we would learn. But the today's student, today's learning scenario has changed a lot. As somebody mentioned, that the students immediately cross-check whatever the teacher has said. They have those devices with them readily available where they can cross-check and question the teacher if the teacher is correct or not. So as a result, the students do not simply absorb whatever the teacher has said, but they try to verify, they try to cross check. So I go back to my previous slide. It is not only information that is passed on, but it is also analytical thinking about what has been mentioned by the teacher, how relevant it is, how useful it is. Second thing that national education policy talks about is a holistic and multidisciplinary education. I go back to the partnership of 21st century skills slide where core subjects was emphasized. A maths teacher would not know what a geography teacher is teaching. A history teacher would not know what a physics teacher is teaching. But the NEP emphasizes on multidisciplinarity in education. Do you think it is necessary for a physics teacher to know a little bit of history or vice versa? Is it necessary? This is a provision of national education policy, and therefore I'm asking you this question. Yeah, so very well put, Nidhi, and very well put all others also, Krishna and Chirag and Pankaj. Yes. See, knowledge cannot be really restricted. It is we that have restricted knowledge into certain fields, certain categories. So as I had said about physics and history, while mentioning physics and history, like those words came to me automatically somehow. And I also started thinking how to answer this question to myself. Is a physics teacher required to know history? And the answer that I found while talking to you people was, isn't history also seeped in physics? There has been a series of experimentation, contradictions, proofs, and there has been a whole series of history that is involved even in physics. So there was a time when people believed that Earth is standing on a series of tortoises. And then there was a time that people believed that Earth is flat. And then there was a time when people believed that Earth is the center of the world. But it is through experimentation and evolution that we have come to the level where we believe that sun is the center. And we had this kind of a notion how Earth was created, and we are trying to prove in CERN the Big Bang Theory. So isn't history also very deeply integrated even in physics? Can we really get away with history? Can we really get away with language? So even a physics teacher, doesn't a physics teacher need the knowledge of language? Very correctly, as Nidhi was mentioning, I would like to share one experience that I had. I was given to teach Latin American paper, Latin American literature. Now, in the first class, I started talking to the students about what Latin American literature is in essence. And then somebody raised a hand and said, Madam, where is Latin America? Now, to make them understand what Latin America is, I had to not merely show them the map, I also had to talk about the history, why it came to be called Latin America. So I am teaching literature. I am doing so using language, but I am teaching them also geography and history. When you teach literature, you teach them biographies also. You teach them theoretical literary movements also, and you go back in history. And therefore, we can very clearly understand, even in our discipline, yes, literature. When we are talking about literature, we are also talking to them about sociology, because we say literature is a mirror to the society. And when we talk about society, sociology comes in, history comes in, political science comes in. When we are talking about literature, we are actually doing a multidisciplinary, making a multidisciplinary analytical understanding of the discipline. And you cannot have literature merely as literature, but it is deeply integrating several other disciplines. So I am teaching a paper called Victorian Age literature. Now, when I am talking about Hardy, can I not discuss, should I not discuss Darwin? Now, Darwin is not my field of study. Darwin is in biology. But why do I have to discuss Darwin if I have to discuss Hardy? Why do I have to discuss Industrial Revolution? That's not my field of study. I am a teacher of literature. But then, unless I make them understand Industrial Revolution, unless I make them understand imperialism, unless I make them understand some history and some sociology, I would not be able to make them understand why William Blake wrote London. And we have to, Indrajit Mukherjee, yes, you have raised your hand.
Yes, ma'am. Probably that is why interdisciplinary in research and as well as in cultural studies has come up.
Yes. Yeah. So cultural studies as a field came up in the last 3 decades of the previous century. But we cannot say that we are not doing cultural studies either way. So even when you are talking about literature, you are talking about several questions, several aspects which are related and deeply integrated with language. So when we are looking at Victorian age or the previous age, when we are looking at Jane Austen, when we are looking at the text Jane Eyre, are we not looking at representation of the female, and are we not looking at the representation of the society, right? So these are the disciplines have emerged primarily as a response to the requirements of the discipline. Okay, but any kind of field, any field is basically multidisciplinary, and therefore what is needed is not compartmentalization of education, but a holistic and multidisciplinary education, which is one of the mainstays. Towards a more holistic and multidisciplinary education is one of the subtitles in national education policy, and that means there is a lot of emphasis in national education policy on merging of fields and identifying how one field feeds into another. And as a result, several times we feel that when we are talking about literature, if we have some other teacher from another field, so I am recalled about Robert Browning, and when we are talking about how he deals with psychoanalysis of characters, right? You all would agree with me that when we are talking about Robert Browning, particularly his dramatic monologues, we are talking about psychoanalysis of the characters. So doesn't psychology come in? So we cannot actually leave any field. We cannot say that this field is not our field. We also have to acquaint ourselves, and that is, yes, even when we are talking about stream of consciousness. So anything like after we have Simon Freud, we cannot really leave aside the whole of 20th century. One of the major aspects is how psychology has impacted ego and superego, how they are impacting human nature, human behavior, right? So knowledge is highly holistic and multidisciplinary, and national education policy focuses on movement away from strict compartmentalization towards more holistic and multidisciplinary education. Yes, you also do statistical analysis while doing survey. Very correct. Yes. So you are actually merging statistics. Literature is the mother of all existing disciplines. I am not, yes, I'm not too sure whether it is the mother, but yes, maybe I can say that it is a very good host. It allows all the systems, all the other language systems, all the other epistemes to merge into it. Yes, right. So one of the, if I am allowed to move to the next aspect, use of digital pedagogy is something that has been stressed greatly in national education policy. This is in tune with the requirements of the 21st century skills, use of online resources and collaboration. Uh, Things have drastically changed in the last 2 years because of COVID. But if you recall the kind of teaching learning environment you had earlier, maybe some of you used to have a blended learning approach where you used to integrate technology in your teaching. But I am sure there would be others who would say that even then, several classes were greatly teacher led, and there was more of chalk and talk in the classroom. There used to be the physical textbook which we used to follow, or we used to limit ourselves to the notes, resources which highly printed in the physical form. And yes, a little bit of overhead projectors. But in the last 2 years, we have made a very decisive shift towards online resources and collaborations. As somebody of you had earlier mentioned that nowadays we share the notes, we share the teaching material on WhatsApp to our students, we mail them several things. Notices are not printed these days, and we send the circulars on WhatsApp groups and through emails. So online resources. So actually, when the national education policy was being drafted, nobody had visualized that COVID would come in. And you see how relevant, how significant this national education policy is, that it focuses so much on use of online resources, and which has become the need of the hour, because in the last 2 years, we probably could not have survived if we did not have the online resources for our benefit. Education would have completely collapsed, except for the fact that we were able to shift ourselves completely to the online modes, and we could help our students carry on their education in the last 2 years. So I would just like to mention at this point that had online digital learning not been there, these last 2 years would have been a complete zero in terms of development of their education. So we may not be very satisfied with what has happened in the last years in terms of teaching learning, but it is better than nothing. We have been able to teach them something, maybe not as much as we were able to do earlier, but at least something is better than nothing. So these are certain provisions of national education policy. And now I move on to the role of English language teachers. This again is from Kivunja's article, where they talk about what is the role of teachers in the 21st century skills development. Now, we have outlined in one of the previous slides what are the requirements of the 21st centuries, and it is very important. So one of the teachers saying that teacher life itself is syllabus, right? Yes. So how is teacher, like, since we are in this FTP situation, we also have to relate it to our context and make us understand what is 21st century and how is it relevant to us. One of the first things that he says is teachers are the vehicles of transferring or ensuring that the learners become ready for the requirements of the 21st century. One of the most important things that they stress is that teachers have the commitment towards students. They know their subjects, they know how to teach them. The role of the teacher, as you are rightly saying, is more of facilitator, more of a moderator. What is very important is that we are mentoring our students and we are responsible for monitoring their progress. We are in a situation to be able to think critically, understand the circumstance. So as you said, situation has taught us, yes, very correctly, but we are able to adapt very quickly with the situation because we are much more mature and we are able to analyze, learn from the circumstances and adapt very quickly. And also we are members of learning communities. We can interact, we can exchange ideas, we can exchange information as we are rightly doing. And we learn from each other, and as a result, we are the actual catalysts which will ensure that our students become ready to face the challenges of the 21st century. So there are these 4 major categories in which the students have to be ready. Core subjects, we are already doing. We have to make them ready for learning and innovation skills. We have to make them ready for career and life skills. And we also have to make them ready for tapping information through media and technology using digital learning resources. Now, one of the very important places where English language teachers come in is learning and innovation skills. There are 4 very important aspects of learning and innovation skills as highlighted in Partnership for 21st Century Skills. These are creativity and innovation skills, being able to create something new, to be able to think out of the box, to innovate, to bring in something new. Another very important is critical thinking and problem solving skills. So in the earlier times, as somebody had earlier mentioned, whatever the teacher would say, the students would accept, but not so. They think critically. They think whether what is said is relevant, what is said is correct. They need all that knowledge for their own use, for their own application. Another important, a very, very important aspect of 21st century learning is communication and collaboration skills. Nobody can learn in isolation. Nobody can learn in vacuum. We need to be holding each other's hands. We need to be learning together. Do you people remember when you were students? When the teacher would be dictating something or when the teacher would be teaching something and you would be taking down notes. Do you remember those times? We used to scribble in our notebooks, whatever the teacher used to say, right? So I think most of us had this habit. We would be quickly peeping into the notebooks of our neighbors. And we would be trying to see if we had missed something and some point has been noted down by the other person. We would immediately want to note that point down. Did you people do that? I used to do that because it was very difficult for me. The teacher would be speaking very fast and it was not be possible that, you can write down everything, every word that the teacher says. So we would be peeping left and right to see if I have missed some point and the other person has written. So we were collaborating. We did not know that, but we were collaborating. We were helping each other to take up the most from the teachers. Sometimes we would not attend the class and tell us, I'll say in Hindi, तुम notes ले लेना ना, मुझे दे देना. आज मैं जाती हूँ, कल तुम चले जाना. So we used to do such kind of collaboration with our friends. So nobody can survive in vacuum. We have to be collaborating with each other. Yes, we often did that. One class, one person would attend, another class, another person would attend. And therefore, we used to collaborate with our friends in learning. And so collaboration becomes something, now the students take screenshots, yes. And we cannot survive today without communication. Therefore, all these 4 things have become a very important aspect of the learning scenario, and they have to be inculcated in the pedagogy of the 21st century classroom. We have to equip our students in all these aspects. And this brings me to another very important idea, which is becoming the mainstay of language. How many of you have heard of Bloom's taxonomy? Have you heard about Bloom's taxonomy?
Yes, ma'am, we follow it
Yes.
while assessing and
Yeah.
for teaching also.
So post 2020, post 2015, when national curriculum framework was implemented, Bloom's taxonomy has become the mainstay of designing of our syllabuses, teaching methodology, pedagogy, assessment, everything revolves around Bloom's taxonomy. So when I am talking about what is the requirement of 21st century, I cannot but discuss Bloom's taxonomy. So here you go. Bloom's taxonomy, or the revised Bloom's taxonomy, focuses on 6 basic skills that are determining the objectives of education. The most basic aspect is remember. Whatever facts are told, they need to be remembered by the students. But more than remember, understanding is important. So understanding is different from remembering. I may remember that my mother told me that the milk is boiling and it is on the gas. I may remember that she told me. But understanding is the fact that I need to switch off the gas when the milk boils. There is a difference between remembering and understanding. What is remembered need not be understood, but what is understood is based on remembering some information that has been passed. The pedagogy in the earlier century focused primarily on memorizing, remembering. But what is needed in the 21st century is much, much more than simply remembering the facts. It requires an understanding and application of those facts. You need to apply your knowledge. The fact that milk boils, and if it continues boiling, it will spill over, and therefore you need to apply your understanding of operating the gas and switching off the gas knob in time to avoid spillage of the milk. So you need to also apply the knowledge that you have. Yeah, there are so many people who have raised your hands. Yes. Yeah. So I can see Mr. Mohit Save. I'm sorry, I do not know your title. So Mohit Saveji, would you like to say something? Mohit sir? You have raised your hand.
It
Yeah.
was raised for Bloom taxonomy, madam. We all of have raised for that.
Yeah, okay. So can you please put your hands down? Nisha Dubeji and Mohit Saveji, yes. Can you please put your hands down? Right. So then 3 levels which are very significant in Bloom's taxonomy: analyze, evaluate, and create. Analyze the information that has been given to you, what it means to you, how can you interpret it? That is analysis. Judge, evaluate. Is it relevant? Is it useful? Is it worthy of your time? And finally, be able to create something out of it. Please remember, we are continuously talking about creation and innovation. We are continuously talking about analysis. We are continuously talking about application of knowledge. These are certain things which were not so much emphasized in the previous centuries. What Bloom's taxonomy has told us as the learning objectives, they are completely in tune with the requirements of the 21st century skills, and national education policy tries to address all these things. So I would quickly go back. So if you look at the 21st century skills, it talks about learning and information. It talks about information, media, and technology skills. When it is talking about learning and innovation skills, it is talking about creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, and all these are aspects which have been highlighted in Bloom's taxonomy. I go to national education policy and you see that innovative and experiential methods, holistic and multidisciplinary education, and online resources, all these are in tune with what Bloom and Anderson have told us, that these are the objectives of education. And therefore, what we need as teachers is to keep sight of all these three very significant interventions into teaching and make our learning scenario in tune with the requirements of the 21st century, the learning objectives that have been highlighted by the Bloom's taxonomy in the framework of the national education policy. If there are any questions, I would like to take questions or comments. I would like to take them before I move ahead. Is there anybody who would like to share something, ask a question or say something? So is it okay if I move further? So I am now moving on to the second aspect of my presentation. So when I am talking about apply, analyze, evaluate, and create, I think I should, in my presentation, practically apply whatever I am professing. Somebody had raised a hand. Dharampal Fulzeleji. Yes. Would you like to say something? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, ma'am. My question is that, ma'am, what is new in new education policy? I used to face this question. We have a multidisciplinarity approach in previous syllabi and courses also, but what is new in new education policy?
Yes. So, did you have multidisciplinarity in the previous policies? Or
though we do not find in policies, but in the courses we find, ma'am.
In what sense? Can you please explain?
My point is that, ma'am, so new education policy arrived. So what is new in new education policy? In previous education policies also, there is segments of multiple disciplinarity.
Sir, I would like to, yeah. Please continue.
So what is, means my question to you, ma'am, according to you, what is new in new education policy?
Yeah.
I want to know.
Yeah. So according to me, see, there has been a very long gap between the previous education policy and this education policy. And the previous education policy focused. So if you will have to go back to the previous education policy of 1980s, which focused much more on specializations, which focused much more on narrowing down of fields, that did not have so much focus on multidisciplinarity. So if you look at
Yeah.
the emphasis in the previous education policy of 1980s, the focus was not on multidisciplinarity. Creation of much
Yeah.
more
Focus was not there.
specialization.
Yeah.
Second aspect is a direct
Yeah.
impact of the turn of the century, which is digital education. In the second decade of the 21st century, government has taken very decisive steps of digitizing education. So you have NME ICT policy that has been put in place. Several MOOC courses have been developed. A lot of digitization of education, EPG Partner, Swayam, several other portals have come up, which were not there in the previous education policies. But the government now wants to bring in all these developments in digital education in the mainstay of education. Earlier, if you had done a MOOC course, for example, I did a MOOC course from University of Oregon in 2014. Whatever I learned there is knowledge that I have, but that does not get transformed into credits for me. But with the new education policy, it is possible, it is necessary that all that learning can be transferred into credits, and I would be accounted. I would be able to get account for whatever I have learned outside my curriculum as well. There are actually, so I would like to break here. See, my presentation is not on new education policy. Please.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah.
Otherwise, I will take up another hour and a half to talk about new education policy.
Okay.
Right? So maybe we will come and meet some other time, and we will talk a little bit more in detail. I think your sessions began today itself. Is today your first day, as I understand?
Yeah, ma'am. Right.
And during the course of this refresher course, you will be coming in contact with several well-known scholars and educationists who would be talking in detail about national education policy. And certain questions that you have asked me are very pertinent and very relevant, yes. And all those questions, I hope, will be answered, but then I would be always welcome and I would always be available for such kind of sessions, even outside your refresher course. But let me talk to you about a few more things that I wanted to talk with you regarding the framework that I have taken. So if you permit me, I will, yes, you are very right.
Yes.
I would like to move further in my presentation where I am focusing now on the role of teacher in inculcating the 21st century skills. Now, there has been very long debate that has been going on two aspects that English language teachers deal with. What should we focus on? Accuracy or communicative ability? You can share your views by putting your answers in the chat box. So when I'm talking about accuracy, I'm waiting for your answers. What do you think is very important? Accuracy or communicative ability? Okay, Hemaji says both. Okay, what about others? Yeah. Okay. Yes, Dr. Meenakshi Kulkarni. Yeah.
Madam, communicative ability should be given little bit more importance than accuracy. This is what I feel. Once the communicative ability is there, then the accuracy will come automatically.
Right. Okay. Right. So yeah, I agree completely that both are important. Yes, both are important, and therefore this kind of a dilemma has been created. Had anybody felt that only one is important, then this kind of dilemma would not have come at all. So yes, accuracy is also important and communicative ability is also very important. But what should be given a preference? If you have to sacrifice one for the other, what would you have to sacrifice? Would you sacrifice communicative ability for accuracy or the vice versa? That is the question. And that is what we have to think about as language teachers. So I will say why I am saying this. So when we are talking about accuracy, we are talking about correct use of vocabulary, correct spellings in writing. We are talking about correct grammatical structure. We are talking about correct sentence construction or discourse construction. On the other hand, when we are talking about communicative ability, we are focusing on being able to communicate. We may not be accurate, but we are able to communicate. So for example, my mother tongue is Hindi, but I live in Gujarat. When I came to Gujarat, I had to go to shops to purchase certain things. At that point, it became very important for me to be able to communicate what I wanted. I wanted to learn Gujarati accurately, but to learn language accurately, I had to wait for a while. So immediately, my immediate goal was learning communicative ability, learning certain vocabulary items which would help me. So for example, in Gujarat, to give you one or two examples, like I am a lady, and even if I was not a lady, everybody needs to eat vegetables. So in Gujarat, there are certain specific regional names of the vegetables. So I will talk about the okay, let me think about something. Potato. In Hindi, we call it aloo. But in Gujarati, they call it batata. If I would say aloo, they would not know it. So I had to immediately learn a Gujarati word to be able to communicate. In Hindi, we say dhania, coriander. We call it dhania. But in Gujarati, they call it kothmir. So unless I learned those words, I would not be able to buy vegetables for myself. So my immediate goal was to be able to communicate with the shopkeepers as to what I wanted. But eventually, yes, at that time, though I sacrificed accuracy. So even today, when I speak Gujarati, people are able to make out that she does not know Gujarati so well because she makes gender mistakes. But I'm able to communicate. And I'm sure several of you would have migrated from your places of your region, your regional places, and moved to other places. Are there anybody who have migrated from their own native places to another regions? Yes, a few. So probably you would have also felt the same kind of things that I felt. And yeah, so I think at that point, what becomes very important for us is to be able to acquire a communicative ability rather than focus on accuracy. Yeah, Dr. Neha Arora, want to say something? Dr. Neha
No,
Arora?
ma'am, I don't want to say anything. You just asked that if someone is from has migrated from
Yeah. Okay.
For that
Yeah,
I
yeah,
raised
yeah.
mine.
Yeah.
I am from Lucknow. I'm settled in Rajasthan. So,
Right.
So
So you would not probably have faced so much difficulty because that is still the Hindi belt.
ma'am, Yes, but when the house helps comes and they speak in typical Marwadi or some local dialect, I'm not able to get anything what they're saying. So there are, if I don't face much problem in the market, but then in communicating with the house help and other, domestic services, I really struggle.
Right. So yes, so sometimes it becomes very vital for us to be able to learn the language of the people where we are residing. And in the certain circumstances, yes, we have to focus more on communicative ability. So I am now moving my presentation more towards teaching and learning of English language. And I would talk a little bit about how the previous approaches to teaching language focused much more on accuracy. We had grammar translation method and structural oral situational approaches, which were highly based on literature, and they inculcated accuracy in us. In grammar translation method, the mainstay of this teaching methodology was to teach grammar, and primarily for people who are in migrant situations, we were taught how to translate from one language to another. And a lot of emphasis was on accuracy. All these approaches were primarily literature based, which focused on teaching and learning of literature. So whether we are learning grammar, whether we are translating, most of it was done through teaching of literature. But in the recent times, things have changed a lot. A paradigm shift came in the 1970s. You are all teachers of English, and I'm sure you all know this, but I have a point to make, and therefore I'm just very quickly revising these things. Notional functional approach and communicative approach. Both these approaches came much later in 1970s, which shifted the focus to communicative ability from accuracy. Delheims in 1972, which was furthered by Canal and Swain in 1979, laid a lot of emphasis on communicative competence, and they highlighted that communicative competence is much more than linguistic competence, much more than rules of grammar, much more than accuracy of vocabulary. Communicative competence involves the ability to construct a discourse, to understand a discourse, involves sociolinguistic competence, involves ability to know what to say when, and this changed the focus from the previous approaches to the contemporary approaches. This understanding becomes very important for the teachers because the 21st century focuses primarily on communication. It does not focus so much on accuracy. I think all of you would agree with me. We have WhatsApp universities. A lot of gyan is exchanged on WhatsApp. A lot of knowledge is exchanged on WhatsApp, and nobody bothers about accuracy. People transliterate. People write Hindi in English, Marwadi in English. So your letters, your script is English, but the language that you are writing may be Bangla, maybe Gujarati, maybe Hindi, maybe Marathi. When you are writing, you are very quickly typing, and you are not even concerned about whether you are writing the correct spelling or not. We use emojis randomly. We make use of short forms. So I have developed this habit, good or bad, I don't know. You will be better able to tell me. In due course of time, I may also forget the correct spelling. So when I write office, I do not write OFFICE, I write OFC. I'm in my office. So I would simply write OFC. So I am a teacher of English. I am an associate professor. And in spite of that, I am playing with the language. And I am using the short form because OFC reads as office. And I think all of us, all the time, are the culprits of doing such kind of a thing. So when we are typing messages on WhatsApp, there would be very few of us who would say that we write completely correct grammatical sentences. Do you agree with me?
Yes, ma'am.
So when we are not writing completely correct grammatical sentences, we are actually focusing more on communicative ability rather than focusing more on accuracy. And that is the mainstay of the 21st century skill. And yes, tomorrow, we meet tomorrow. Yes. And several people would write, yes, you are right. I agree with Chirag. Yes, completely. And therefore, what we need is a shift from grammar practice to language practice. What we need is a very flexible framework of teaching rather than a very rigid framework of teaching, which is completely able to evolve with the requirements of the learners and in tune with the demands of the 21st century. We need to focus on listening, speaking, reading, and writing. All of you would agree. The way we were taught, the way we grew up learning English language, we learned only reading and writing. Isn't it so? Some of us did not even learn reading. They just learned how to write. There was no speaking, there was no listening. But the modern day language requirement, communicative context is more listening and speaking and less reading and writing. Yes. Yeah. So several people would say that, yeah, as long as we are able to communicate, there is no harm. But yes, you need to learn how to listen and you need to learn how to speak, which were not taught in our classrooms earlier at all, but they become a very important aspect of teaching learning situation in the 21st century. And it is here that the role of language teachers, English teachers, comes into focus. Because we are the ones who are going to drive the development of communicative ability. We all love teaching literature. We all love literature. We take pride in calling ourselves students of literature, teachers of literature. But certain other thing that I would like you people to think about. Is literature the goal of teaching, or is it also the means of teaching language? Are we teaching literature per se to our students, or are we using literature to teach them language? When we are talking about MA in English, we are talking about teaching students how to analyze and interpret literature. But when we are teaching students, let us say, of history, of sociology, of business BBA, of BCom, of sciences, literature that we teach them, is it for understanding the literature, or is it a means to teach them to communicate in language? So we have to be very clear about our objectives in the English language classroom. I go back to what you had told me earlier. Today's students are very vigilant. They know what they want. and they want to learn what is useful to them. They would not take anything that the teacher gives it to them only because the teacher has given it, but because it is relevant. And therefore, as teachers, we need to analyze what is the learning objective of what we are doing in the classroom. This is my personal perspective, and you can completely question me for saying so. But then when I am teaching students of first year BA, where students of different disciplines sit in my class, and I am teaching them a story or I am teaching them a poem, they would not be very interested in learning what personification is, what a metaphor is. I can use that text to make them learn language better. I can use that text to develop the literary sensibility, which will not be there in everybody, but then I can definitely, as a teacher, as a follower of literature, do that. But is that the only objective that I am working with? Or am I there in that particular classroom to help them develop their communicative ability or to learn literature? As a teacher, this has to be my question to myself in context of the Bloom's taxonomy, in context of the 21st century skills. What is it that through literature, yeah, I missed that, what you said. Okay, I can't, through literature, just give me 1 second. Most of us teach language to all branches except English students, right? Yeah, so I am just trying to make a point that we have to understand what we are using literature for in our classrooms. It will definitely depend upon the level of the students and the kind of course that we are addressing. Today's classroom needs to be learner-centered. It has to address the needs of the learners. It cannot keep the learners passive, merely as receptacles of knowledge. Unless we make learners active and participative in the teaching learning process, they will lose interest. According to one of the recent studies, the attention span of today's student is only of 9 minutes. It earlier used to be of 32 minutes. See how drastically the attention span has changed in the last 1 decade. If in my school, the classes used to be of 35 minutes. And the reasoning that I learned when I grew up, that attention span of students is 32 minutes. After 32 minutes, they start looking at their watches and packing up their bags. But today's learners' attention span is only 9 minutes. And after 9 minutes, they will start checking their WhatsApp. They will start checking their Insta. And therefore, the responsibility and the onus is on the teacher to keep them in the class. The student will not. We have, as teachers, we have to keep them involved in our scenario, in our teaching learning context. Otherwise, they will be dissociated with whatever we are doing. Today's learner is much more responsible for his or her own learning. They are capable of learning on their own because knowledge is at their fingertips. They have to learn by doing. The learning objectives are analyze and create rather than simply mugging up of information. And in light of this, we as teachers need to evolve. There is a lot of responsibility on us teachers of meeting the challenges that the 21st century is throwing up for us. We cannot sit back and just emulate our teachers. Those times have gone. We are new generation teachers. We are facing the new generation learners. They are the millennials. and we have to adapt ourselves according to them. And therefore, yes, teachers have much more challenges than the students. I completely agree. National Training Laboratories Institute, Maine, talks about the learning pyramid. It talks about how much learning actually takes place. And as you can see through this pyramid, when you are lecturing the students, only 5% learning takes place. When they read, 10%. When you show visuals or when you play an audio track, 20% learning. Demonstration shows them 30%. But when they practice something, when they do something on their own, 75% learning takes place. So see the change. Lecture makes them learn only 5%. But when they do something on their own, 75% learning takes place. Teaching others is 90%. That I cannot advocate in a classroom because we are ultimately teachers and we are teaching students. But we can make them practice. And if we are able to make them practice, then a lot of learning can take place. I would like to conclude my presentation by a very important quotation. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And teachers have to be the flag bearers of this because we are the ones who have to unlearn first and relearn again before we can profess these things for our students. I will stop my presentation here. Thank you so very much for being very cooperative. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.